Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the March 14 meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee. Pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling 508-945-4410, 508-945-4410, and enter the conference ID 370-403-592 #, 403-592 #, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by me, the chair. We are going to continue our annual town meeting article review today, notably starting with the new Center for Active Living capital project, and then working our way into some zoning changes and potential declarations of surplus property relative to said COA capital project and Stony Hill Road and Stepping Stones Road. But first, the roll call. Norma? Aye. Kristen?
Here.
Tommy?
Here.
Barb?
Here.
John Papalardo is not with us today. Tracy?
Here.
Joanne?
Here.
Andy? Here. The chair is thankfully present. We have a quorum. So with that, Alex, why don't we turn it over to you to start if we could, please? Or Terry, who's going to go first?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just muting my neighbor here. Yes, today we have really the discussion for the Center for Active Living, formerly known as the Council on Aging. So for the new capital project for the Center for Active Living to be located at 1610 Main Street, which was, again, Bill Marsh donated the property to the town once again, renewed his donation, a very generous donation. As of March 8th at 3:15, we received revised cost estimates as the owner's project manager, Rick Pomeroy, and architect Joel Bergman had worked through really going fine-tooth over all the numbers. And the revised estimate that the select board voted on last week was $10,667,944, and that does include the owner's contingency of 5% and a supplemental owner's contingency of 2.5%. But those were less than the numbers that were first in the original packet, and I believe your chair did send out that revised estimate to you last week. Not sure how many of you were able to view the select board meeting on Thursday night. I think it was Thursday night. So on the 8th, but again, the select board did vote for it, and with that, I can either turn it back to the chair or over to Terry Whalen for more introductions. I know that we have Rick Pomeroy, our owner's project manager, with us today.
Mr. Chair.
1 second, Joanne, please. So thank you, Alex. I will make one comment before recognizing Joanne, which is to say a repeat of what I noted last week, which is it is not, Alex referenced the select board vote last Thursday. It is not the intent of this committee to vote on this project today. I want everybody to hear what has to be said and what new information is out there. I'd like the committee to have some time, and so my intent is that we will vote on this on Thursday after having an opportunity to have the information marinate a wee bit for us. So with that, Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tell us again where the savings was found, Alex, please.
I believe that the savings was found in the site work, if I'm not, and something else. I'll let Terry speak to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Terry, why don't you sort of stop the head and walk us through it?
Yeah, I see Rick's up, and actually, I think
Rick can address that.
Certainly. And I apologize for the feedback. Yeah, so Rick can go through actually the details and more specificity, so.
All right, Rick Pomeroy, owner's project manager, welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. Through the chair, the first estimates that were conducted in this round, after we went through them, I have to give you a little history behind it. This was estimated in 2020, and at which time we had conducted a very aggressive value engineering value engineering process for that project, and a lot of the items in the value engineering that were completed in 2020 were relating to site work. And when we received and in 2021, we had done an opinion of the costs. We thought that the recession was rather flat between 20 and 21, but there was no estimate completed. In 2023, when we went back to the estimators, they had gone back and reassessed the project and utilized a lot of the earlier values that were done pre-value engineering, and they updated their costs. And after we reviewed that estimate, we realized that they hadn't recognized some of the value engineering items, primarily in the site work that we had identified in 2020. So when they went back and applied those new quantities and values, the price the overall estimate came down. We also had a third estimate completed during that period of time by PM&C, and they were falling in line with the earlier estimates.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Did I lose?
So Terry, can you just,
Pull up the,
sorry, Rick, you want to continue?
No, I just didn't know if I had lost you because the screen went blank for a moment.
No, I was making a note, I apologize. So Terry, can you just sort of give us a heads of kind of where we are, what's evolved since we've last seen this project, what hasn't evolved, quite apart from just the pricing matrix that we all have?
sure, so just going back, so in your package, you have a copy of the presentation for, that was given to the Board of Selectmen, you know, and basically going back to the floor plan. And if you want, I can pull up the graphics or not, if that's helpful, with the share screen, and Rick can track this as well and
Sure.
chime in. To full size. Okay, here we go. All right, I was projecting as full size on my screen, but hopefully, again, in your package. So if you recollect, this is essentially the same footprint, outer extent of the building, with some of the changes primarily in the configuration of both the, there was a swapping of the mechanical space going from the upper level to the lower level. And so if you're looking at in your package, you'll see now on the first floor, we have restrooms, and in the similar area that there was some configuration changes with the professional services area. Now is a medical equipment and storage area, and mechanical is now up on the second floor. And then there was a reconfiguration of the second floor to accommodate, potentially accommodate adult daycare all within the same, again, footprint and floor plan dimensions of the 10965 that had been part of the previous proposal. So those are kind of subtle changes, but with some additional accommodation of the supportive daycare option in the building. So that's really, if there's a change, it's a subtle change within the building. The layout for similar to the, basically exactly the same as the previous concept with, and again, it's not advancing here on the screen. But in your package, the site plan remains the same with the focus on a very short transit distance for most of the users to the building with 2 access points. Within the parking lot, I think 80%, something like that, 85% of the parking spots are within 125 feet of the door. And again, 0 entry, very flat grades on the site. There's a little bit of a retaining wall, and Rick, again, one of the site costs that was found is that a solid wall was carried originally, and that had been changed to a precast wall. So a little bit reduction in cost there, as Rick and Joel went through the excuse me, the detail of the entire cost estimate. And as Rick mentioned, they also did a complimentary check. So really, all the other graphics, and again, I don't know if it makes sense for me to go on to the other computer, but they're not, but all the elevations, again, no changes proposed to the form or the look of the building. And as we had been talking about this is kind of concept plus or strong concept where, by doing the renderings and some additional work, we're able to get what we feel is a better cost estimate than just a concept. So that's why, by doing the renderings, the elevations, you can get more accurate takeoffs to provide to the cost estimator. And Rick already mentioned the two cost estimates. So the one being starting with the same original cost estimator, and then a cross-reference check, again, to make sure, in the market we're in, to see that we're in the right ballpark, and again, all using the same takeoff data for that.
So let me ask the committee, since we're essentially looking at the same 4 corners of the project we looked at 3 years ago, Terry noted some minor programming changes and some room swaps. Would the committee benefit from having Terry or Rick walk through kind of the floor plates and kind of what's where, what the intended program is? Where do people feel as though they're familiar enough with, having been through this a few times now, that's not necessary? Joanne?
I'm good. Mr. Chair, before we go any further, I just still have a question on the cost and what.
Okay, well, let me get an answer to the question I just asked, and then, so we want to go through the programming, kind of the allocation of space within the building, or do we feel as though we've kind of got a grip on that, and we're good, given that we've seen it a couple of times now? Barbara?
I'm good.
Andy?
I'm good, but I have a question about some of the things.
Okay. Does anybody feel as though they'd like to just get a quick flyby, or are we all good? Okay.
I'm good, except for a couple of questions
Yeah.
like Andy.
Okay, so Joanne, let's start with you then.
And I'm looking at the estimates here, the new ones, and I don't see any, all the figures still look, they add up to be larger than the original ones. Anyway, is there a generator included in this cost? Because there is a
Yes.
possibility, as I look at these
Yes.
plans, there's a possibility that we have finally found our place for our emergency warming station. It has a kitchen, it has bathrooms, things that we've been looking for, and parking that we haven't been able to find in our other buildings. So I think that would be an important feature to mention.
That is part of that was part of the original proposal and continues to remain in the proposal. So that hasn't been pulled out to bring the cost down.
But to be clear, the generator is part of the original proposal, not to run this as a warming shelter during storms and the like? I just want to be very clear about what was in the original proposal you're referring to.
Well, the original proposal, so as far as the the scope of the proposal. So we had carried a generator in the original, back to 2020, had a generator as part of that cost estimate, and it remained. That was not pulled out as part of this, the additional QA/QC on the budget.
Yep, okay.
So that's still in there, that hasn't changed. So that's an apples to apples, I guess, comparison between 2020 and the latest estimate, that's still part of the
Okay,
project.
that's helpful, but to be clear about Joanne's second point around using this as a shelter, is the proposal from the town that this is formally going to be deployed as a warming shelter with overnight habitation and everything that entails, or is that not currently on the table?
No, this facility is not being designed as an emergency shelter. Emergency shelter, a specific emergency shelter would require dormitory type use, and this facility can be used as a warming station, yes, but it's not being designed as an emergency shelter.
Okay, I thought that was the case. I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear
Yep.
on that. So Joanne,
Mr. Chair, yes, it comes closer to anything we have in town so far, and I'm encouraged by hearing that it's something that could be converted close to what we're ultimately looking for in case of a bad storm, which I suspect are going to get worse rather than better through the next 20 years. I don't know why I keep saying that, the figures for the site increased from 6 million to 7 million. Where are the savings? I guess I'm not seeing what you had to cut in order to get this new estimate. If
Mr.
you've said it before, just abbreviate it for me and say it again.
Certainly, if I may, through you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
The savings I was referring to were savings that we recognized in the first round of cost-cutting measures back in 2020. And that's where I think someone had asked at one point, because you had been provided a breakdown several days ago or a week ago that is greater than what you have in front of you today. And so I think someone from the crowd had asked, what is the difference or where are the savings? And so what I was trying to describe was that the savings that we recognized between what you had been delivered last week and what you have in front of you now was actually generated back in 2020 in an earlier estimate. But when the estimators were refreshing their estimates for 2023, they did not recognize the cuts that we had made. So when we had them go back and recognize those cuts, which was primarily in the site work, is why we're seeing a difference between what you were delivered last week and what you have in front of you today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Norma, please.
It always amazes me. The word no is such a simple word. The simple word no is so easy to understand and so hard for some people to understand, and I don't know why. I have several questions. Why is this supplemental owner? Who would be the supplemental owner?
I could explain that if I may.
Yeah, please,
Through
Rick.
you, Mr. Chair. It's a supplemental owner's contingency. Normally, in projects at this stage in a project, in early design, conceptual design, we would be recommending a 10% owner's contingency. In 2020, if you look at the chart in 2020, in order to drive the number down to a reasonable, what we thought was a reasonable value that could be approved at town meeting, the recommendation was to cut the 10% contingency to 5%. And so that's why you see a 5% contingency line. What we're trying to do is provide you with a chronology of the numbers from 20 to 2023. So we wanted to continue carrying that line of 5%. We had recommended to the select board last week that a 5% contingency is not necessarily adequate for a project at this stage of design, and that we would normally be recommending, a 10%, but we had offered up or made the suggestion of adding the 2.5%. So that's why we're calling it a supplemental owner's contingency. On a regular budget spreadsheet, you would see one line, and it would say owner's contingency 7.5%.
Please, yes,
According to my figures here,
Andy.
who is getting this 496?
You don't have to hold your finger out.
Who is getting this 496 plus 248? That's quite a contingency fund. That's a lot of money. And
It
I
is a
wonder
lot of
why
money.
it's so high.
It is a
Since
lot
it
of
went
money.
from nothing on the supplemental owner's contingency fund in 3 years back, in 2020, it's now gone to 248,000 for supplemental owner and 496,000 for primary owner. That's a lot of money, and I don't understand why.
Rick, can you take that one?
Yes, certainly. A contingency is a balancing mechanism for the owner to maintain during the construction of a project, during the design and construction of a project. There are always unknowns and unforeseens that occur in a project, or there may be changes that the owner chooses to make during the project. And if that were to be the case, then those monies would be drawn from the contingency. If there are no changes to the project and no upgrades that the owner chooses along the way, then the owner's contingency would not be impacted by that much. But normal construction budget, good practice when developing a construction budget is to carry an owner's contingency for unforeseen conditions and changes that the owner may want to make.
Is there a usual percentage for that?
At this stage in the project, we normally recommend 10%. When the project, after the project has been bid publicly and you have a bid in hand and you know exactly what your number is, we recommend that owner's contingency be at 5%.
This is almost $750,000 contingency fund. I consider that a lot of money to be held maybe if we need it. Maybe you don't consider that a lot of money. I have some other questions. Someone said, no, this will not be an emergency shelter. Why not? A terrific storm has been predicted for tonight. Now, if you have a home down on Little Beach, or perhaps on Morris Island, or you are far out in the boondocks, you might need emergency shelter. Why is that not a consideration for a building that is being built by the town for the town?
Terry, you want to grab that one, or Alex?
Can I add something?
Unless Rick,
Well, Rick can talk to the requirements for the shelter,
Yeah.
and then it's really a policy decision on, but this building is not designed as a shelter, so.
Right. There are some additional components to the design. If you were to be offering this as an emergency shelter, there would have to be shower and bathing facilities within the building to allow people, if they're there for an extended period of time. And that's the primary difference between this design and a shelter designated for emergency shelter. There are some other components, emergency generator, which we've complied with, but the major difference is having shower and bathing facilities within the property.
So bottom line is, this is not intended ever to be an emergency shelter when people really just need a cot and a bathroom. Second question, have you considered the proximity of the pond for this area? And have you considered the fact that the airport is under a lot of pressure to do something about that runway? Are those two considerations part of your consideration for this building?
Yeah, so to the first question regarding the site, that's some of the items that have been mentioned, those are designed to handle the stormwater and adequately develop the site so it can be permitted to comply with the environmental regulations. So there's, all of that is part of the total site proposal to make that work on that site. So there's even been preliminary discussion along those lines of what's needed for that to be permitted. So on the one graphic, the incursion into the buffer area was minimized as much as possible to protect the adjacent water bodies for permitting purposes.
Including the airport?
Well, and
Haven't
in
answered
the
my
airport, I mean, the location, it's outside of any, the approach or the runway protection zone right now, so.
Well, maybe someday I'll get my questions answered, but thank you anyway.
Okay, Andy, I think you're next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious about the adult day healthcare addition to this. A number of years ago, as I recall, the front building at the Victorian Health was, in fact, purposed as an adult day care center that was then found to be under-demanded. And so I gather Chatham now has an arrangement with Orleans for folks who want to go to adult day healthcare. Yeah, what kind of I have no idea what the census is from Chatham over at the Orleans Center, nor how much demand there would be for one by the time this building was completed. Is there any data to back anything up there?
Terry, I don't have any data as to.
Yeah, we're going to have,
many
Leah's going to respond to that question, Rick.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Leah Lacrosse. I'm the Director of Community Services, also the Director of the Council on Aging. I'll be happy to speak to the Adult Supportive Day Program. It's a great question. Currently, right now, at the Orleans COA, we have 6 Chatham residents who are attending. We have another 2 that are that would like to attend, but they have expressed that they would like to attend it in their own hometown, which is understandable. So currently, that census is at 6. And if I don't know if there are other specific questions, but I can tell you more about Adult Day supportive services if you'd like.
I mean, I'd be curious to know what is this design allowing for?
So the design, the 800 square feet, I believe would be able to support up to 10 residents in that program. In there would be furniture that would be, comfortable for their needs. It would also, there would be, the current ratio that the state asks for right now is 1 staff to every 8 participants. So with the current, if we had 6 participants, we would need 1 additional staff. I did do some research on that. The average cost of a full-time, what they call an activities coordinator for these type of programs, is between $16 and $19 an hour, or at the very most, $39,520 annualized and $51,376 with fringe. I can pass these out to you after, so you have a copy of them. Also, with the Adult Day program, it's different from Adult Day Health, which would require a full-time nurse on site at all times in addition to the staff. An Adult Day Supportive Program is for those individuals who can basically express their own needs, take care of their needs, like their basic needs, like using the facilities, feeding themselves. But it offers a respite program to their caregivers, which we are finding, especially right now, without an outreach coordinator. I've been performing all of the outreach duties at the center, and I have pretty much a constant need for people who call me and say, I'm taking care of my spouse at home. I'm exhausted, they can't be left alone, and I just want to go to the store. I just want to do my grocery shopping. That's exactly what this service is for. They may not need someone to feed them or bathe them, but they aren't allowed to be alone. So that's what this program would provide. We would also the requirement of this program is to provide a healthy lunch. I've been spending a lot of time with Judy over the COA director at the Orleans Center, because she is currently right now the only person on the Cape that's providing this service. She estimates the cost of providing meals between $6 and $8 a day per person, but there's a charge of $55 per day per person to attend the program. So at least that covers their meals. But I'm trying to find the exact thing. The total cost for participation in the day program is a total cost for projected FY _24. Her total cost for running the program is approximately $95 a day. The only training that of course, the staff needs training, but the most training that this person or people would need, they have to be certified in basic CPR, and they also have to be certified in a course that is being able to identify signs of abuse in older adults.
So Lee, can I just ask a quick question in respect of that? I thought I heard you say that the annual salary fully loaded is roughly $50,000, but you also just said that Orleans operating costs on an annual basis is only roughly $35,000. Is that ex the employee?
I'm sorry?
Is that excluding the employee?
No, for them, it's including the employee. They have approximately, I think that they're up to, they have 2 staff at this point. So they have, I believe, about 14 participants.
So I guess I don't understand how if we have 2 staff at $50,000 a head, the annual operating cost of the program is only $35,000, which is roughly 95 times 365. It can't be.
I don't know what she pays her staff on the lower end. I did not ask her what her salary was. The research that I did was through the state and other online websites
Okay.
for the average salary cost.
Okay, I'll follow up on that in time. So, Andy, you good? Are you still?
I have a question.
Hold on, Norma, please. Andy,
I'm sorry.
you set? Okay, Norma.
Let me just step on you there. I would question where you can get anybody to work for $16 to $19 an hour when it costs $50 to get a kid to mow your lawn. I think that would be wonderful, but I don't think it works. Have you ever given any thought to running a probationary or an academic or a supplemental program with 4 Cs or Monomoy to supplement part of that? And they would get credit for it, and you would certainly get a good worker because they're overseen. It has to be, spoken to and authorized. Have you ever given any thought to that?
I haven't, to be honest with you, but I think it's a great idea and one that's worthy of looking into further.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions from the committee? Joanne, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. And these are all really good questions, and this reminds us that we have quite an opportunity here to plan and to use a parcel of land for the benefit of some part of our Chatham population.
We're renting it out.
40-some years, it takes a long time to get over that.
The commute's a killer.
But when you talk about the space that's been allotted for the daycare, adult daycare, that is space, if you're talking about wanting to use this in another way, could possibly be converted, so you could use it as a warming station, that particular space. So I think some of the objections might be the use of space, how we use it, the cost of it, whereas we're trying to set up a program for Chatham seniors that will be just as good for them, just like we're setting up as capital spending for the surf boat maybe, for the transfer station maybe, for other things that are very important to Chatham. And our seniors' living is also very important to Chatham. So I think it's good to toss these ideas out of the ones that Norma and Andy have had. And if you've got a space there and you're thinking, well, which is more important, the adult daycare or a warming center? Well, I think we should be thinking about that when we're talking about this amount of money. But no mistake about it, this amount of money is being looked at to be spent on things like whether it's dredging or coastal resources or the renewing the transfer station, rebuilding the transfer station and our wells and sewers and all that. This is also for the benefit of a large part of our population. And it bears a lot of thought, I think. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Joanne. Tracy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your explanation. It's my understanding that the demand is pretty high for the services out of Orleans for the adult care.
Correct.
Yes. So potentially we could have seniors from other towns that might want to utilize the Chatham facilities.
That's correct. There's a intermunicipality agreement, which is the same agreement that allows us to use, our residents to use Orleans currently, and we could do the same.
Right, and we would receive funds for doing so.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tracy. Other questions? Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Leah, did you say that we charge people to use these services? So if someone from either Chatham or Orleans wanted to drop off a senior so that they could shop, there's a fee for that?
Yes. Yeah, the typical fee is $55 per day for the program time.
So chances are anything that we would be, excuse me, any additional personnel that we'd be hiring to run the center could be covered by costs that would be passed along to the people utilizing those services?
Correct. The only additional, I shouldn't say additional, the only other staff that's required to run this program is an administrator, which is the COA director. So I'm already there, so it would only be the direct care staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Kristen, please.
I have a couple of questions. One is on the permitting, and that used to be mapped area for rare species. So when you say you're going into the buffer, I'm just want to bring that up, that it's probably not insurmountable, but I just want to point that those ponds in the back there have been documented as high species, rare species habitat.
Yeah, point noted, and actually back to 2020, we probably have to refresh our letters, but we did reach out to both, or Natural Heritage and also Mass Historic Commission. So we had started early coordination going back as far as 2020. So as part of, when and if the project gets approved, then we would start our formal permitting. But we did do our due diligence with that, and we also had it in the, again, not in this full presentation, go back to the 2020 presentation as part of the feasibility. We had reviews by wetland scientists and also coordinated with Natural Heritage. So those were mostly incorporated into the design, and again, what was costed out. But the final site plan clearly would need to go through Conservation Commission review.
Mm-hmm.
Norma, please.
Would any of these programs be available for persons with disabilities without having to add another star? For instance, a person in a wheelchair.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that would be available without additional personnel.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, further. Kristen, please.
Just to follow up on the site alteration and the species habitat. What's the degree of grading? I mean, I'm looking at a site plan here, but I'm familiar with those lots, and I know they drop off incredibly steeply, which is kind of the danger for those ponds and the buffer around them. I know when the houses were built for the habitat homes, there was a disastrous erosion occurrence there. And it appears from what I'm looking at here is that there's going to be a fair amount of grading, and so I just guess want to make that point. And then secondly, when we look at these town projects, and in particular this one, when we start looking at the pricing out landscape design and stormwater, are we looking at anything innovative, or are we just looking at putting asphalt down in the typical catch basins and minimal landscaping?
If
Are
I
there any
may, Karen?
policies that I'm not aware of, I guess, or are there policies in how we look at
I
landscapes
think Rick's going to
today?
talk,
Okay.
I'll supplement with Rick, but I'll defer to Rick on the, because again, he can go over what was actually spec'd in there,
Thank you.
Thank you.
in the cost estimate.
And I just wanted to supplement what Terry had mentioned earlier back in 2020, when the original request went into the National Heritage and Endangered Species program. They had identified 2 pond edge vegetation concerns, smartweed and a Plymouth gentian, and both of which are found to be around the edge of the pond. As the speaker was mentioning, there is some severe grading in the rear of the property, and so because of that, we're considerable distance away from the pond edge, and so the NHESP did not see that as a concern. And with regards to the grading, we do have a retaining wall that would be installed to minimize the amount of disturbance below and down towards the pond, and the retaining wall would be supporting the site and the pavement area. With regards to storm drainage, we do have some subsurface infiltration basins designed because of the size of the site. There's not much we can rely upon surface-wise, but we do also have some rain gardens incorporated into the design. So we're taking advantage of as much as possible for surface control. And we do have a preliminary landscaping plan that had been discussed. We had an informal meeting with site plan review back in 2020 as well. And so we're getting as much landscaping incorporated into the site as possible.
Thank you. I have another question on a whole
Please,
other.
no, go for
that's all right. So this has to do more with programming, and I'm just wondering with the, I don't know exactly what the proper term is, but for the adult daycare program, has there been any investigation of looking at being a referral for folks that are in the business of caring for people in their homes, and a more maybe regional or working with other organizations beyond the town of Orleans? I'm just wondering if this is a necessary function for the town of Chatham, or if there's a way that we can facilitate those needs in the town, in this community, but not necessarily try to be all to everyone for all of our needs by creating a facility for all of the needs. Thank you.
That's another really good question. In the town of Chatham, for us too, there have been several people that I have referred to different agencies. There's a public health nurse brought on through Elder Services in the VNA. And if someone qualifies income-wise, they can qualify to have the public nurse come over, do an evaluation, and then possibly send over a home health aide that will come a couple hours a day and do basic cleaning and helping with bathing. That is the one service that there is that's appropriate for people who can't afford it. Otherwise, they're paying exorbitant fees for home health care that they have to private pay for. A lot of times, insurance, of course, will cover VNA services and everything else, but they don't often cover services to come in and provide respite care to the caregivers. Does that make sense?
Yes, I guess my overall policy question is, does the town need to provide all services ever that anybody might need? I mean, this is, and I understand that there's a need. I'm not denying that there's a need, but, you know, we're looking at a extremely expensive project to Mrs. Sprague's point. We have a lot of things to balance, and I'm just wondering whether we need a building of this size. I'm wondering, you know, I still go back to, and I've spoken to folks about this, I still go back to the community center and wondering why we can't just add on there. And I think, you know, while there may be a dozen folks in town who are in real need, I'm just wondering if there are other options for us than building a brand-new building with, of this size and capacity. That's just my ongoing question. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I respond to
Yes,
that?
please. Thank you.
Okay, we understand that the cost seems very high for this type of building. And the adult day program is something that's very much needed, but there are other reasons that we need this building as well. You know, just so everybody knows, if I could take a minute to speak of all the good things that are happening at the Chatham Center for Active Living. In just the past 6 months, and again, I will hand this out to you so that you have it for reference, we had 4,763 visitors to our center in the last 6 months. We served 548 outreach clients. We filled 132 Shine appointments, which is serving the health insurance needs of everyone. For those of you who don't know, the Shine appointments, which Pat, our chair, can speak to more because she is one of our wonderful Shine volunteers. It helps people, older adults, enroll in their Medicare programs, which, if you can imagine how difficult it is to navigate those programs. If you hit one wrong button, then you may pay for a lot more of your benefits. We provided 699 rides to our medical appointments. We distributed 773 bags of food, equal to 16,104 meals with a value of approximately $37,490.50 to local residents in collaboration with the Harwich Family Food Pantry. We have hired, in the past 6 months, we have hired a new program and communications coordinator. Some of you may know Jessica Rogers. She has more than quadrupled our programs there, and more and more, there seems to be a full house at all of our programs. In addition to that, you're probably more familiar with the wonderful services that we offer, such as the Shine program, the transportation to medical appointments, mental health appointments. We have blood pressure clinics there. We have legal clinics here. We provide foot care, Alzheimer's support groups, and an LGBTQ support group. We have arthritis exercise programs, and we offer tax preparation services. And yes, some of them are at the community center, but we have also just hired a deputy director of community services of the Recreation and Beaches Division, Amy Howell, who is very busy developing all new programs for the community center for all ages as well. So I'm very fortunate. They're two great staff, and they're working very closely together to coordinate programs at both sites. But pretty soon, very soon, then the community center will be filled to the brim with programs, and so won't we. We will have enough programs that we'll fill every inch of this space in our new programs. So I completely appreciate your argument that it's an expensive building for one program, but that's just one of many that we would like to offer.
Thank you. Norma, please.
Going back to the proposed new buildings, there are many persons in town, seniors and otherwise, who live in apartments or in condos who really don't have much chance to get outside. In this new facility, are there any outdoor spaces, activities, runs, plots that can be utilized just for the sake of being outside?
Yes, another great question. We are so excited about this property in particular because it does offer some green space for our residents, which we are dying to have. Right now, we have offered outdoor programs. They've been in the front in our driveway, in our very small driveway, because we recognize the importance of having outdoor programming, and we would provide transportation. If they couldn't get out of their house, we would provide transportation to come pick them up and bring them to the center and then home again.
It's not just outdoor programs. It could be just outdoors, having a place to go for a walk around the area and have a place to sit down and eat your lunch or read a book or visit a neighbor. I think we don't encourage persons of all ages to move. And if you don't move, you don't grow.
A body in motion stays in motion, right? I agree with you.
Thank you.
And like my physical therapist says, Norma, motion is lotion. Okay, further questions to Joanne, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think while we're talking about this, we also have to look at our overall picture of capital expenditure. And this year, Alex, I'm going to depend on you to back me up on this. We're expecting about $30 million worth of capital expenditure, separate article, or all capital expenditure, something like that.
Yeah, if I might, yes, we are looking at a number of debt authorizations. So that means we're authorizing the projects to move forward. However, we don't expect them all to hit the tax rate all at one time, because obviously it will take a couple of years to complete each and all of these projects. So for example, with the transfer station, we were looking out around 6 months.
Oh, stop right there. That's part of the question I want to ask you, because what we have to do, I think, is start prioritizing. So what would all phases of the rebuilding of the transfer station cost us, all phases?
We don't currently have all phases of those, because we only looked at phase 1 and phase 2 for this current fiscal year, or for the upcoming fiscal year. We did not get the estimate for phase 3, so that would be something in the future.
Phase 1 and phase 2?
Yes.
Approximately.
And that was, what we had presented to the Select Board and the Finance Committee was $4,820,000.
4 million.
820,000.
So when the other projects are added on to this, other parts of this project, it will grow beyond 4 million. Possibly.
If the Select Board wants to move forward with phase 3, which was the final phase of that project, yes.
Okay, so that's something on our capital list. We have, we're looking at the surf boat. What would that cost us ultimately? Or do we have any idea yet?
The surf boat, as I understand it, and that will be on the Select Board's agenda tonight, so for the audience to tune into that. Excuse me. That request is $250,000 to come from the tax rate, so from the tax levy for, and that is a match, grant match. So again, the $250,000 would be local funds for a matching grant for the the surf-capable boat. Again, the Select Board will discuss that tonight, so that has not been recommended by the Select Board yet.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention, I think all these questions help us decide where in the priority list a capital expenditure like this would be. And I want to bring up something that we don't think about this gift of land to the town. The gift, a building on this plot of land, say it's the senior center, will be not only for the seniors and for the purpose of providing for seniors, but it's a capital asset. And Mr. Chairman, it's a capital asset on the expression I use often, but I think it's so important, the gateway to Chatham, all the way 28 from 137 down through Crowell Street intersection, which will be another important one for us, and into the town of Chatham. That's the gateway to Chatham. Now, if we don't use this land, for a project that the town wants to put there, because we've been gifted the land, somebody's going to use it. Something's going to be built, and someone's going to build it, and we may not have the same authority over what is built, how it looks, as we do on this project. And I think that's something we get caught up in wanting to serve the seniors, but also This is an asset for the town of Chatham if we put something there, whatever goes there. This is the only chance we get to have something to say about what it will be. So I think we need to consider, there's so many things we need to consider, but I think it's important to remember it's not just a senior center. It's part of Route 28 on the way to Chatham. And the looks of it and the usefulness of it, I think, will be very important through the years to the town.
Thank you, Joanne. Just, excuse me, a footnote to Joanne's comments. In our draft report, we have identified $43,600,000 in spending projects that are being proposed. Alex's point is quite right. It's not all going to be funded in 1 year. Some of it involves debt authorization, some of it's on the tax rate, some of it's going to be borrowings. But to be clear, $19.8 million for the PFAS facility, $5.8 million for the belt filter press, $550,000 for, excuse me, water mains, $10.419 million for the senior center, $4.820 at the transfer station, $2 million at the Eldridge Library, $250,000 for a surf boat, total $43.6 million.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. Tracy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wondered if I could ask the board who had been to the center. I know that on an issue with the water, or there'd been talk of a field trip that y'all had done sometime before to see some municipal property. And I was just curious if it had been any time that anyone on the board, else on the board had been to the existing facility, because I recently had my first experience in there, and really was shocked at the limits of what that facility is able to, what services can even be performed in that facility, and just how handicapped the ability to provide what the seniors in our town need. And if I can also just anecdotally from learning somewhat more and interacting somewhat more with folks around the senior center issues, just how many folks are, in a difficult situation. I personally come at a lot of these things from like the young working families side of it all, but I really have learned so much about how, it's not just that people don't realize that the kids in our town need free lunches, half of them that go to Chatham Elementary, but that seniors who, maybe they can't move out of their home because there isn't a smaller, reasonable place for them to go, and they're house poor, trying to live out what are always increasingly longer years to our lives, and have nothing left for, some of the basics, be it food or certainly recreation. And I've just learned a lot recently in terms of the needs of the seniors in our town. And I think as much as I like to advocate on behalf of the young people, I think it's really important that we keep this group of population in mind as a priority, and just how dire the need is for this building facility. Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, other questions? Joanne, please.
Oh, Tracy asked a question. She asked if anyone on this board has made use of the facility. And at 91 years old, I will say I have made use of it. I've been to veterans luncheons there for us veterans, which I think is an important service that the order. We don't want to forget the veterans. Quite often, even amongst the senior citizens, our veterans are sort of left behind, sort of forgotten, because they don't do a good job of advocating for themselves. We need to be advocating for us, because they did everything for us many years ago. They did it all for us. We need to be taking care of them a little more. I've been to Busy Fingers there. I've been to their library. I've been to, years ago when they had the computer lessons, I went there. So yes, and it is limited in space and what it has to offer for us. And again, we just have to recognize what the needs of this one part of our community. As Tracy said, we have tried to do our best by instituting our preschool in Chatham, the Florence Selden preschool program, childcare, preserving our elementary school for the good of Chatham. So I don't think we want to make a decision on this project without making sure we've covered all the bases and all the needs, and how it stands up in its priority to the other capital expenditures we are looking to make this year, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Tommy, question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this may be our last opportunity to put together a place for people to go when they don't have any power. I don't think we're not going to be building a building this size again for a while, and a lot of people in town seem to think that we need a place like that, and I agree with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. Kristen, please.
I guess I need to say one more thing, because now's the time to say all these things. Also wondering about the elementary school. I know this has been discussed, certainly at least I've heard people make mention of it. I know that we have not too many children in the school there, and yet it's a very huge building. And I'm wondering if we should be considering, I mean, that's a wonderful location. It seems to me that there could be joint use there in some way. And there's parking, and there's the fire department right there, and there's plenty of walking space. As far as outdoor and trails, this Main Street property is not that. Certainly walking down the sidewalk might be something, but the property next door is not conducive to elderly or necessarily outdoor park recreation. And certainly the site itself, I don't know that it looks like it's mostly parking lot. So I really think that the community center would still be something that I think really needs to be looked at, and secondarily, the elementary school. And again, rather than a whole big brand-new building. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to Tracy's question, I have also been there. I've been to the Shine program, which is amazing. You don't know how much you don't know, to your point, until you've sat with one of those coordinators who are just wonderful. And I love the little library there. I wish I had one just like that in my house. And I think the kitchen, not the dining room, but the kitchen is probably the best part of that building. The rest of it is dilapidated and embarrassing.
Okay. Norma.
The kitchen is very good in there. It is very complete. But please don't discount our kids. That elementary school is a school. It is not something that, well, a few kids are still left there, and hopefully there will be more sometime. Please don't write off our kids. They are important, and they need the identification of, this is my school. It's very important to children. And to say that the elementary school children, although there were not a whole bunch of them, and it doesn't look as though there will be another whole bunch coming in. I mean, I did my part, but there's a lot more to be done. But don't discount them. Hopefully, even though there are few there, they have the identification that this is my school, and that is very, very important to a kid. It is as important to a child as you're saying, this is my house. The school is that child's house for 180 days every year, and he needs to know that, and he needs to have it recognized and said to him, this is a wonderful school, I'm glad you're in it. Don't dilute it, please.
Thank you, Norma. Andy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been quite a while since we've had to look at some of these other things, and maybe I'll ask some obvious questions, but it might be worthwhile. Our town year-round population now is, 7,500, something like that. What percentage of the population qualifies to be served by the Center for Active Living?
65. If somebody could please take the podium.
Yeah, I think our population's around 6,900.
Oh, is it now?
Yeah.
I'm second oldest.
Hi, I'm Judy Hanlon. I'm the Vice President of the Friends Board. I was president when we went through this before. I'm trying to recall the numbers, but I remember during the last campaign that the percentage of seniors 60 plus In Chatham, it was about 57%. I don't know if it's gone up more than that, but
Okay.
it's more than half.
Thank you. So, I mean, from that, you can extract that there's certainly 3,000, maybe 3,500 people who are year-round residents in town who might be served by the Center for Active Living. That's year-round population. What about seasonal population? We know that we get a huge number of visitors for here for, better than a couple of months at a time. Does the Center for Active Living serve any of those? I have no idea. I'm seeing nods, but somebody probably needs to put it on the record.
Okay, I'll get up and stand up. Hello. My name is Pat Burke, and I am the chairperson of the Chatham Council on Aging. And we serve anyone who wants to come. So in the summertime, we will see a big increase in people who are summer residents who take advantage of many of our, not just programs, but services. As a Shine counselor, I have had summer residents come to me and talk about, we're going to retire. What's up? I don't know if any of you are retired, but the Medicare system is one of the most complicated systems you will ever find. I worked in healthcare for more years than I'm willing to tell you, and when I took the course to become a Shine counselor, I was shocked at what I didn't know. People come in and see me, and they are shocked and dismayed at how much this is going to cost them, what they're going to get for their money. I'm not sure if any of you read the Boston Globe. Stephen does not. But there was a big article today on the Medicare Advantage programs and how they're using artificial intelligence to work with someone who's inpatient. So you go inpatient, you're going out, you're going to go to a facility for rehab. The artificial intelligence says Tracy's going to be there for 2 weeks. Well, in 2 weeks, Tracy's not ready to go home. They're going to send Tracy home anyways. So there's a lot of work that gets put into that people really know, and summer residents do use it. Summer residents come to our, we've been to the Summer Residents Advisory Board, and they're supportive of us. They also, we're talking about the community center, and I can speak a little bit about that if you would like. We, since I became chair, we did not just say, we have no place to go. We said, where are we going to go? We listened to a presentation by Rick and Joel Bogman, the architect, regarding repurposing Stony Hill or adding on to the community center. The amount of space that we could have added to the community center was about, I think, worked into maybe 6,500 square feet of space, and was going to come and take out a good part of the front of the building that's often utilized for their fairs and some summer projects that they use. We were also going to take a fair amount of the green space that the kids use at the community center. I personally went down last year and sat at the community center to see exactly what happened there and why that wasn't a good space, and saw the multiple programs that we would be disrupting if we were to put ourselves at the community center. So we decided that that wasn't the best place for us. Fortunately, we have a very good board, and Joe Gagliano, who, sitting right over there, he came to our board with a good suggestion. We have a loose leaf book about this thick with every site we've ever been to. We're going back to, I don't know, I go back to Middle Road, so whatever you have before that, I don't know. But Joe took the time to go through the book and said, okay, let's look at another site. In the fall, we spent an enormous amount of time looking at what we were calling the Old Comers Road site. It was one of the sites that was up at the Marconi Center. that had come up before as piece of town-owned land and could, in fact, we place a COA there. I spoke with Kristen as a preservationist. I spoke with the open space fellow, I can't remember his name, Jack somebody. Betty Magnuson, who's here, spent multiple hours taking people on tours of their property to show them. I spoke to the Historical Commission, and what we found was we hit roadblocks at every single place. We hit a roadblock because of preservation. We hit a roadblock because there could be some Indian artifacts there. We hit a roadblock with open space. So we had to sit back and say, this isn't the right place for us. But I do not want you to think for 1 second that we have not worked diligently to try to find the best space for us. We were fortunate that in January, 1610 all of a sudden came onto our table. None of us knew this was going to happen, but we looked at it and we said, I'll use an Obama term, shovel ready. We had done all the work. We had done, Rick and Joel had done everything that needed to be. And then we looked at the space. And for many years that we've been discussing this, we've said supportive daycare is, we're going to get that at some time. No. I'm going to tell you that it is an incredible need in Chatham. I can give you an example of someone who came in to see me. It was through the SHINE program, but people come in and they have all sorts of different ideas about what they need. And we also help them with Mass Health, which is another system that God knows. And this poor spouse was trying to get her spouse into an adult day program. She had 2 days in Orleans, which is $55 a day. We do transport people there. Then she had 2 days in a privately run program in Brewster that was going up to $100 a day. What was happening was the spouse was increasingly becoming more needy. So now we were looking at where were we going to apply for the Mass Health application to either get a frail elder waiver to get some services in the home, or what we were going to do to get him into long-term care to help him. So I can't tell you the people who come to see me who turn 65 and they've been on Mass Health. They duly, and they say to me, well, Mass Health covers all these things. Well, when you get to be 65 and you go on Medicare, they kick you off Mass Health, except in the pandemic, but they will now. And one woman came to see me, and she was, the income level at the time was $1,040. She was $20 over income. She lost her Mass Health. She had to pay for her Part B premium. It was, a lot. So as you can see, I'm very passionate about that. I know that, yes.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to interrupt you. You did answer the question, and about the segment of the population that I think sometimes is only seen as being the COA board. I mean, we do have 3,000 plus people who qualify for those services. In the summer, we have more. We don't know exactly how many, but we do have more. And they can be as needing of services as the youngest child.
Yes.
In the past, the town has had a senior population that was more than ready to step up and support the schools, as they should have. We should also be ready to step up and support our seniors. But the question is, that's been circulating around this for the last 3 years, as to what extent, how much money exactly, and what other aspects of this project perhaps could be shrunk or set aside temporarily in order to make this, less of a financial hit. So far, I don't see any. I did have an interesting conversation with somebody in the building trades last week that said, yeah, we have to put in a big contingency for our building plans, as Rick has suggested in this. But in certain areas, they're actually seeing the cost of some of the materials beginning to fall as supply chain issues are being dealt with. I mean, so there's both some increases and some decreases that we might have to deal with. I guess in the end, I still have to figure out where I stand on this, but thank you for the information. It was very helpful, and I hope those who listen to this or read about this, remind themselves that there are quite a few people in town that the COA serves.
If you could let me say one more thing, Stephen?
Okay, yes, please. But then I've got a couple questions I want to have answered. I'm looking at the clock. I'm sure there are people here who want to talk. So I do want to move this along. I think everybody's had an opportunity to ask questions and voice their opinion. Again, we're not voting for a couple of days, but please, Pat, go ahead.
When I look at the Chatham Center for Active Living, as it is now called, and I look at the needs of the people in Chatham, when I speak to people, I put it on the same level. I look at the police department, I look at the fire department, and I look at the Chatham Council on Aging. They're all the same. The Chatham Council on Aging works with the police department for elders at risk daily, on a daily basis. It's all the same thing. We need the Chatham Council on Aging just as much as we need the fire station and the police station. So if you can get your head in to a space that thinks like that, I think you will come forward and really support us. And thank you so much for letting us come. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat. So I've got two questions. I know, but I'm going to ask my questions first, and then we're going to open it to the public. I've been waiting very patiently to ask these two questions. And I guess this could be for any of Rick, Terry, or Alex. My understanding, I've heard it voiced at the select board meeting last week, I guess. I heard it voiced today, that typically we would be holding a 10% contingency at this part of the process. I'm wondering why we're only holding 75. It sort of seems to favor the House, if I were to be cynical, but I'm not cynical, so I'm curious why we're not holding 10%, which would be typical. Apparently, we are repeatedly being told.
I can answer that if you may, Mr.
Please.
Mr. Chairman. One of the reasons is that we have gone through this project. I was just as the speakers were speaking, and a lot of great content. I was going through all of the presentations since 2020, and we've really drilled this project down. Although we haven't fully designed it, we've really drilled it down. As I mentioned before, we looked at a lot of value engineering or cost management reductions in the site work. We've completed a lot of takeoffs. We had coastal engineering involved with the site work to quantify those. We've met with our structural engineer, our HVAC engineers. We feel pretty comfortable with kind of where things are falling right now. So I think that both Joel and I, when talking about this, we felt comfortable with making that recommendation for the 7.5%.
Okay, that's very helpful. Unless there's something to add, Terry or Alex, I'll move on to my next question. Nope, nothing to add. Fine. Thank you, Rick. I am fairly certain I have never seen, and I can only extract to assume that the committee has never seen, any kind of operating projections with respect to this facility. And I'm surprised that that's not been the case. It's unimaginable to me as a finance guy to think about spending $10 million on a project without at least making a modest effort to understand what the going forward operating costs are going to be. We got a little bit from Leah on what the prospective cost of a adult daycare, even though I confess to not understanding the numbers. But do we know what maintenance costs are gonna be, what insurance costs are gonna be, what staffing costs are gonna be, cleaning costs are going to be? Do you have any numbers associated with the operations of this building for at least the next 3 to 5 years?
I have not run the insurance costs, but we can probably get an estimate on that based on the value of the building. I would think that some of the newer mechanicals, we hope that they're more efficient. Again, we're looking at probably some energy efficient and cleaner, greener type of efficiencies. I think Terry can speak more to that for this building. So hopefully that would reduce some of the costs. Again, the current structure is older, probably not the best energy efficiencies, and in the building, I'm not sure, but I don't know if Terry, if you can add anything to that.
No, I would just echo or build upon the, from the efficiency standpoint. So again, this would be designed to, and quite frankly, we have new codes as well. So that's a nuance that maybe also we didn't touch on, but in one of the slides, we had a graphic. So there's new codes that need to be complied with as well. So those are all driving towards more efficiency and from the operation perspective. So, and clearly, we're designing for a 40 to 50 year, 40 to 50 year building. So, but again, with the new equipment and the good life cycles on and efficiency with the newer equipment should, again, it's a slightly larger, building, but the operational cost will be mitigated by the newer equipment and better performance.
We have a section in our report to the warrant where we're reintroducing our section from last year entitled "The Unknown Unknowns." And I'm going to put this in that. I was intrigued to read just before I left to come over to this meeting that the EPA has issued PFAS regulations for drinking water in the amount of 2 parts per trillion for one of the categories and 4 parts per trillion in the other. We just spent close to $25 million trying to meet a 20 parts per trillion threshold. So I can only imagine what the implications of the EPA's new regulations are with respect to PFAS on our financial situation and our unknown unknowns as we think about what things are going to cost in the future that we may not know. Okay, Norma, please.
The current,
Then I'd like to open it up to the public if we could, please.
sorry, the current building, Council, is a rabbit warren. You have no idea when you go in there where you're going. There's no signage. So I would hope that those things would be considered. You go downstairs and there's this plethora of spaces, some of which have chairs stretched out, some of which have chairs stacked up, and you just kind of stumble along trying to find a room that might be what you're looking for. And I would hope that if this new facility someday is built, you have a much better access and egress information center. I think for anyone who is not from town, who has not been in that building, could easily get lost in case of fire. I think we have tried so hard to do some things that we haven't, and really important things have not been done. So I would hope before we even voted on any of this, all those things would be considered. That's a rabbit warren up there and a fire trap. How is that going to be changed?
Rick, you want to just give us a quick flyby of kind of the accessibility of the building and egressability?
Yes, wayfinding is what we call it, and that's a big component of our design, so that anybody visiting the facility can find their way around simply by the signs, but also with Braille use as well. I also wanted to go back to the question about operating costs, and I think that Terry and Alex had mentioned it, but we're operating under a new energy code that was enacted, and we're also operating under a new electrical and building code upgrades. So the building is extremely energy efficient, and I would be interested to challenge that against the operating cost today at the existing facility, not only operating but the capital improvement costs. I know that there's a great expense going into the equipment, to keep that building running. So I think that that's a part of the equation that everyone has to be thinking about.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Rick. All right, Barbara, and then I'm going to open it up to the public if we could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question for Alex. So Alex, assuming that 1610 passes, there's an article that asks the voters to designate 193 as affordable housing. Is that right?
Yes, if 1610 passes, there's several articles. One is that the Select Board would declare 193 Stony Hill as surplus, and then I think tonight they will hear another article that would appropriate $75,000 to begin the design and engineering costs for 193, and these are both contingent articles if 1610 passes, to reuse that site for attainable and/or affordable housing. So again, that would be contingent on 1610 passing, and that is to try and get, keep it, the motivation going to repurpose 193 for housing.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So let's open it up to the crowd. I see Mr. Oppenheim has his hand in the air. If you'd like to approach the dais or the podium.
I thank you, David Oppenheim. I sympathize with all your deliberations. I was on this board in the 70s with Dougie Bowman and a lot of people that aren't here any longer. It's a lot of work. What was just brought up by Barbara, I'd like to focus on in a second. Michael Barry, who's the president of the Friends, asked if I would come today. I'm not part of the board, but I'm working with the Friends, and I've been in favor of a new Council on Aging building. I questioned the locations. I was part of the group that pushed for stepping stones to be looked at last year. Ironically, it's good that it didn't get approved because I think it's going to be put to better use as affordable housing or attainable housing. I'm just going to use the word housing. We can all determine what kind of housing it is at a later date. I think one of the focuses that we need to do is 1610 is being donated, whether it's a perfect site or not. It's the best site that's available right now. I thought the community center was a great site originally, but I thought it should have been where the Little League field was so that it was separate, and then they could have shared some of the things. I think we have to agree that that ship has sailed. I think what we need to do now, we've been arguing about things for years now. This has been on the planning for I don't know how many years. Back when I was on the Finance Committee, we talked about housing in the 70s. It hasn't gotten better. I think we've now reached crisis stage. One of the things that's not being discussed about, which Barbara just brought up, is the companion article of 193, and this was suggested a while ago. For the first time in a long time, I think the town is finally taking steps. We've acquired land for affordable housing. We're repurposing, rezoning Stepping Stones Road. We've got some land off 137, the Buckley property. There's discussions about the old water department that'll go to town meeting this year. But this is a building that we own on Stony Hill, the existing senior center. It's in a residential neighborhood. There's condominiums there. There's single-family housing. It's an existing building. I can't give you exact figures, but as someone that I'd like to think I'm somewhat familiar with business, I'm going to give you a reason why I don't think this big increase in price is not being offset in many ways by 193. We've gone from 8.5 million to 10.5 million, whatever the actual numbers are. I'm going to use round numbers. Much as Andy said, I think it's possible if the numbers could come down, depending on supply chains and whether we go into the economy changes. We won't know until that happens. I agree with Rick Pomeroy that the way that this has been done and estimated this time, and then having a second estimator come in and check the first estimator, I have a great deal of confidence in the numbers as they stand today and the best way you can possibly estimate. And I think the 7.5% contingency is fair given these circumstances. My economics is I believe that the existing center is approximately 8,000 feet according to the assessor's map. It's not the best 8,000 square feet I've ever seen, but it's 8,000 square feet. My wife and I had an apartment in Boston for years, a two-bedroom apartment that was 780 square feet. So I'm just going to use round numbers. I think we can design that property into 8, perhaps more apartments. I think you can have handicap accessible apartments on the first floor because of the lay of the land. I believe there's 34 or 36 parking spaces that exist there right now, so using a minimum of 8 apartments, depending on configuration of 1 or 2 bedrooms, you only need 16 spaces. So we have spaces we can give back, or maybe there'll be some few visitor spaces and more open space outside. The foundational work, we're gonna strip the thing down to studs. It's gonna be complete rebuild. But even though somebody has questioned this, renovations of that nature, as opposed to historic renovations, cost less than new in most cases. If you use, and I'm just throwing out numbers, $500 a square foot today to build a residence, which would be a pretty nice residence, even at today's prices, and said you were gonna save 30% on renovating, that's $150 a square foot. So if you use eight apartments, and it could be more, could be less, and said you attribute $125,000 to $150,000 per apartment on the site cost, and then say you're gonna spend another $250,000 on each one, but you're saving about 8,000 square, saying somewhere over $1 million on the construction costs, 8,000 square feet times so much a square foot. I would submit that we are, and this being done, and that's why we need to talk more about the housing, because in my opinion, housing is more critical than the senior center. The seniors need their new center, but the number one crisis other than the environmental issues in this town is housing. We all recognize it. Everybody wins on this. The seniors get their place where they should have it. I do believe, having now become more familiar with what goes on there, that more people will come and utilize the space when the space is appealing and more easily utilized. And to have 8 apartments shovel-ready. The day they move out, we can put the shovel into ground, because there's money that's going to be authorized, hopefully, to have the planning and design done. And I think it was $75,000, because I believe there's actually more money elsewhere that could be utilized, so that it's actually enough to redesign that building. It's not hard to redesign that building. It's a great location for families or singles. And we're always talking about young people. How about some of the old people that need places to live, the elder people in this town that need one-bedroom apartments or places to live? All we talk about is it's not just for the youth. It's not just for the working people. It's for the whole population in Chatham. In addition to that, been working with the Friends, and while I can't commit to any amounts of money, the Friends are committed to raising a bunch of money. How much that bunch is going to be, I will tell you. And with Michael's permission, I will say our goal is to be at least $1 million. We are having our first meeting with a professional fundraising expert that's well-known on Cape Cod, works for the Family Pantry, the Pleasant Bay Boating, to how to do a campaign to raise that kind of money. I will tell you, we already have commitments for over $300,000. And I don't think being involved with a lot of fundraising for different groups in this thing, raising $1 million, in my opinion, is not going to be difficult. What should that money be used for? I think that goes, assuming all this will be subject to affirmative approval at town meeting. And let's just keep it round and say that the Friends raise $1 million. I think some of that money could be used towards capital. I think some of that money could be used towards fit-up. And I think some of that money, and I think a lot of that money, may want to be used towards answering questions like Mr. Daniel had. What's it cost for programming? What's it cost to enhance? To find out what we're going to do. Ongoing programming. The other nice thing about this is once the Friends are successful with this type of a fundraise, they're going to know how to raise more money every year, because all the things will be in place. So their modest fundraising, which has always been successful but is relatively modest, will grow. Raising money for a building is easy. When buildings go up, people want to get on board. Look what happened with the Orpheum. I can tell you when we raised money for the building. Buildings are easy to raise money for. What the use should be would be, assume again that all this is approved at town meeting, and it's important that all the articles get approved, because there's a lot of support coming from younger people who, quite frankly, aren't thrilled with the idea of the senior center, think it's a lot of money, this, that, and the other thing. And all they think about is housing. I have no place to live. The seniors have a place at least to go. I have friends that have no place to sleep. Well, the seniors deserve a better place where they can function better, and the town deserves as much housing as possible. So all these articles need to pass, because everybody wins. It's the best time for a long time for the town to get together, stop arguing, and do something in this town where everybody benefits. I strongly urge your support on this.
Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim. Anybody else from the general public who might like to offer some comments or remarks? Oh, please. I'm sorry, thank you. I got my spotters, that's good. Anybody have a little hand up on the screen? Somebody does, 2 hands. Okay. All right, Dean, you'll be next, and then Rick Levitt, please. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, my name's Carol DeChristopher, and I've been on the Council of Aging board for a long time. I am not going to give you a history. I'd like to just emphasize a few things. First of all, I love the fact that this project is a win-win project, that we're actually going to figure out a way to create more housing and also have a building that will accommodate seniors' needs. With regard to the perception that some of us don't understand the word no, it was our understanding that when you have 50% or more of a group saying they're in favor of something, that's a majority. And normally that is, except when you need a supermajority in order to get funding. Our understanding about the no was that there were tweaks that needed to be done in order to improve the project. And so that's what this project is all about, tweaking the project so that we could get 2/3 folks saying no. With
2/3 saying
I mean,
yes.
saying yes. No, please.
Careful.
No. Whoops. The next thing I'd like to address is that there was an interesting proposal, but I'm not sure how it could be accommodated with regard to having the senior center as potentially a shelter or whatever. The one thing I do understand about that, though, is that would probably cost more money. So I don't know whether that's a project that would be sensible for us to pursue at this point. Kristen, I was very aware of your concerns about the school, and other folks had expressed that interest before, the elementary school. And Norma, I understand what you're saying about school is the kid's house. But also, there's another issue here, and that is that there is a contract that we have with the Board of Education, which it's my understanding they have, the Board of Education and the superintendent of schools really has the say-so in how this property will be used for at least, I know it was a 20-year contract, I'm just not sure where they are in the contract, but it's a long time to be waiting. So I think that I am aware of 12 years of doing this project. Most people remember that the project at the Marconi, there were 2 projects. In fact, there were 3 proposals. The first one being the building that is now used as an event room, which most of you probably don't remember when that was proposed as a solution to the senior center. So that's how long we've been at this. If you add that 12 to a potential 15, I think 27 years is way, way too long to wait. I just love, the community center. Last Thursday, I went to an exercise program at the community center. This is March, beginning of March. There were 80 cars in the parking lot. I can only imagine if we had the senior center there in the summer and dealing with the traffic and the parking, what that would look like. So those are my reactions to this. Is this the best place that will ever be? No, but this is a really good place. This is what's available. And I think that this is the time. We've really done our very best to address the questions that the community has. And I just think that this is a really good opportunity for us now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean, I apologize for not seeing your little hand figure, but you're up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be very brief because I have to drop off this call. And I'm not going to use my position as liaison to advocate on this for you. I just want to provide some informational pieces in response to some questions, but two disparate pieces of information. First, your agenda for March 16th does not show the COA building. I know you wanted to take a vote, so that would have to be attended to. Secondly, the surf boat, we did actually vote as a select board to put that on the warrant and to recommend it. It was a split vote of 3-2. With respect to 1610, just a couple of points in regards to, in follow-up to some questions that were asked with respect to the community center. We did have a report by the architect and Mr. Pomeroy on the community center, as well as the existing location, and the select board took a pass on it, largely, and I was part of that, because we felt it was cost prohibitive, but there is information on that. And with respect to the elementary school and the community center, the previous speaker mentioned parking. You should be aware that the Parking Solutions Working Group, of which I'm a member, has been looking at that in response to concerns about traffic and parking at the downtown. And those lots are being looked at as a potential for visitor parking in the summertime. So that's just a piece of information you should be aware of. I don't have anything else. I'm happy to try to respond to any questions that you might want to know about what the select board has done, but I thought you should be aware of that. Oh, one other point, Andy asked about where Chatham stands in terms of the aging population. I don't have anything current, but we were told in recent years that Chatham was the second oldest demographic of all the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, with Orleans being number one. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean. Any questions for Dean on his observations? All right. Thank you very much, Dean. Appreciate it. Mr. Levitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I just wanted to make a couple of comments in response to Joanne's comment about priorities. She's absolutely right. I think most of you know I've been involved for a number of years in the effort to revitalize West Chatham Village Center. It is the gateway to Chatham, and it will spur revitalization of the entire West Chatham Village Center by putting this very lovely municipal building there. It will, the municipal building will show the pride we have in Chatham, but from a financial point of view, it will be a good investment. It will produce a good financial return as the rest of West Chatham Village Center becomes redeveloped and revitalized. And then finally, I'd like to respond to Norma and Kristen's comments about outdoor spaces.
Please.
The 1610 Main Street is adjacent to Captain Harding Park. It's a conservation area with paths and walkable paths, which is also connected to the Samuel Hawes Park, a 10-acre conservation area, which is part of the airport, but is designated as a conservation area. So by placing the Center for Active Living at 1610 Main Street, it will provide a great deal of open space and walking trails for our seniors. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else from the general public in the room or online who may want to raise a hand?
Elaine Gibbs. Elaine Gibbs has her hand up.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Gibbs, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had sent you all an email this morning, and so I'm not going to go over it all. But I do have some concerns and questions regarding the potential operating costs and increased staff that this building is going to require. I think that's information that the public should know. I mean, this is a $10 million project, and I think it's pretty basic that we know what the ongoing carrying costs are going to be. And I think to say that, oh, it'll probably be the same or less is pure speculation. I think it's a basic thing before you put something out for a vote that we would have that information by now. This same building has pretty much been in design for a long time with a few upgrades in terms of those needs, but we should have that. Secondly, I just want to make sure on the record that it has been said that this building is not going to be used, it's not being designed, and will not be used as a shelter. It would have been a great thing to do because I've been fighting for an overnight place for Chatham residents to go in emergencies, which has been declined repeatedly by town management. And it would have been great, but that's not part of this program. I also wrote to you about the financials that I kind of wish more time had been spent on. The numbers that are being used right now, the 20-year borrowing rate on this is 3.75%, and the highest being used in the calculations as to what it's going to cost us is 4.5%. And I think that that's an incredibly short-sighted number, the 4.5. If we just listen to what the Feds have been saying about what's going to happen to interest rates, the Fed chair, Powell, said that there are going to be multiple hikes before the end of the year. And that's going to impact municipal bonds as well. And so I guess my concern is that we're going to approve something, and then we're going to find out by the time we go to borrow the money, it's going to cost us a lot more in carrying costs. And I don't think that's disputable. The other thing that has changed that I didn't include in my letter that really impacts this area is that the planning board zoning bylaw change that is going to be applied in this area. And as you all know, it's going to increase the density tremendously with affordable housing. And if only 30 acres are used as they predict or as they hope for multifamily housing on those 30 acres, it's going to result in about 1,400 or 1,500 cars that are going to be parked in that area. And they're going to be leaving their homes 2 or 3 times a day into that 1,200-foot corridor. And there have been no traffic studies on the impact that that's going to have on the ability to get in and out of the Council on Aging. There is a grade, as my understanding it was the last time it was designed, there is a grade coming up onto Route 28 from the parking lot, and there's parking on both sides. It's a very narrow entrance. And so seniors are going to have to negotiate not only people backing in and out in that driveway, but an incline. And so
I'm sorry, can we just make sure that everybody who's not speaking currently is muted, please?
or laughing. I'd like to make my comments without that. So I'm concerned about the safety of seniors coming out onto that busy road that are going to have 18-wheelers coming into town, trying to make a right-hand turn on an uphill grade onto the main road. And with the increase in density, I mean, to say that I guess I'm stunned that we're trying to put in a $10 million building and no traffic studies are being done and coordinated with the affordable housing people, with, and all the other committees that are going to impact us 1,200 square feet where we want to spend this kind of money. So for what it's worth, those are my comments, and you know where I stand on the other things. I think I think the price is going to go up. I think that the borrowing rates are going to be dramatically impacted. And those numbers by the Feds were before the banks started to close. And that is going to impact all of us, and including the taxpayers, but certainly on our ability to fund this building. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Ms. Siegel, and then I'm afraid I'm going to call an end to the conversation around the COA. We have 10 minutes left and we have additional work to do. Alex, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to get to our declarations.
Yeah, we can put those on for next week. We did have other articles. I've just added the Center for Active Living onto next week's agenda as well.
Okay, good. I do want to spend a couple minutes on our report as well, too, before we adjourn. Ms. Siegel, please.
I'm Barbara Siegel, the former chairperson of the Council of Aging Board of Directors. I'm now the co-chair. So I've been dealing with this for quite a number of years. I just want to have a full understanding of the funding. It is my understanding that the money will not be borrowed until the project is finished, which would, if it's approved at town meeting, and I checked the dates with Terry, it will probably maybe be finished by 2026. So nothing will affect anybody until that point. Is that my understanding correct?
Alex, can you take that?
Currently, what we do is, we don't borrow until a project is, well, obviously, the bids are awarded would have to be the first thing. There's certain laws regarding how much we can borrow upfront and how long we have before the project is completed. So if interest rates are reasonable or advantageous at the beginning of the project, we might borrow a certain amount of money in advance of the project. If we expect interest rates to go down or stay level, we would probably borrow, either halfway through the project or when the project is pretty much wrapped up, well done. We always consult with our financial advisors. I've also asked them to make sure that the 4.5% that we're using right now would be, a reasonable number if they've seen any change given the recent events. So I just sent them an email on that. But again, we could do short-term borrowing if interest rates are high, if we think that they're going to come down, and we will, provide an estimate. As I've said before, just because we authorize the amount does not mean that we are going to expend that amount, and we'll borrow only the amount that's needed, and then if there's excess amount left in the authorization, we rescind that borrowing authorization once the project is completely done.
Yeah, but even with the bidding process, that takes a few months.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
certainly wouldn't be till 2000. What year are we in? Thank you.
Currently, we're looking at the budget for FY 2024. If this project were to be approved at town meeting, I think the earliest you could expect it to hit the tax rate would be FY 2026.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Alex. Okay, last questions from the committee on, and I'm serious because we have other stuff to do. Norma?
Just one thing. There were so many unanswered questions that were raised today. I hope we are not going to vote on this until we know more about what's going to happen next.
Well, unfortunately, we have to get a vote recorded for the warrant, which closes next week. So we are going to vote for it on Thursday, or against it on Thursday, because we have to get something recorded for the taxpayers and some guidance to provide to them. So, and then when it comes time to town meeting, we're going to have our new little clickers, and you can press 1 or 2 as your conscience guides you. So I'd like to thank everybody for that robust conversation. Thank the input from everybody in the audience and online. Appreciate it very much. I want to turn our attention, without very little time we have left, to our draft report of the Finance Committee on the 2023 annual town meeting warrant. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at it. I sent out a couple of missing paragraphs earlier today, which I suspect nobody other than Kristen perhaps had a chance to notice that I didn't actually include the attachment, so that's now been resent. Don't know if there's anything people want to bring up on kind of where we are. It's the 4 corners are pretty well nailed down. It does follow the form we've broadly been pursuing, but I'm all ears on what you guys think, and then we add, adds, deletes, change an emphasis. It's not done yet, to be clear, but we're getting closer. Andy, please.
I like the main thrust of the report, by all means, but I found myself thinking, gee, at one point, didn't we used to run a town employee FTE chart over time, all right, showing the total number of FTEs? Would that be helpful in this instance?
I think it probably would be. We used to. We haven't. I think it's been supplanted with the tax rate.
The town manager usually has the number of FTEs in her report.
It's in her transmittal report.
Usually in Appendix B.
Would it help to explain our stand on anything? I haven't seen the town manager's chart.
Well, we're up to about 150 now, which is, as I said, a little over 10% in the last 2 years.
Correct.
So what do people think? There's always room for another chart, as long as we can get it to Shauna within a couple of days.
I mean, I
You'll probably just cut and paste it from Shauna.
We can look to update that again. We're looking at that. We try to update that because I think at one point we were looking, we we had a number of FTEs, we declined after the recession, and we've been slowly building back up.
Correct.
Yeah, so we can certainly make space for that if people.
I mean, whether it charts in our report or not, I mean, just, it may be helpful for us to know the data.
That's a great point.
Right, over a period of, say, 10 years.
Okay, so I will block out a place in the report for the FTE chart, and we can just pull it from Shauna's or Jill's existing form and drop it in. That's a good call, Andy, thank you. Anybody else? Andy?
Just further, although we did put it in our initial report, some admonition about why last year's FTE ad did not entirely take care of the challenges. Apparently, we haven't heard anything further about that, or should we inquire further, or do you want to freewheel on that?
How would you think about, are you suggesting we offer an admonition, or we?
Well, no, we put it in our
highlight the
initial.
fact that the 7 didn't kind of do what we thought it was going to, and?
We put it in our initial report, right, but we didn't, and you did bring it up again, under the operating budget, the additional 7 full-time equivalent employees, was intended to correct these challenges, apparently, and for reasons not entirely clear, they did not. That was kind of a challenge, so why didn't they? What has changed, if anything? It seemed like a logical question.
So do we want to pose that question in the report, do you think? How do you, I'm trying to think how you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, we
would address it.
We either put it in the report, or we hope to receive that information before the report's final.
Okay, I can make a note of that.
Yeah, I mean, your statement draft statement, I think, is clear enough to me, but it's maybe a little obscure.
If I might, we might refer back to the budget as was presented prior to the pandemic, when department heads identified, I think, 15 positions at that time. So I think that might answer the question.
Okay, that may. Right. And that's.
No, that's good. Okay, so let me just figure out how to make a note to myself. Okay.
And just one last thing, and I understand it may be stylistic, but, we may vote to recommend approval of a budget, but, we don't actually approve the budget.
Oh, just in the little italicized.
Yeah, just, it's stylistic, but I mean, that's always been our point of view. I think also your point of view. Our job is to advise town meeting.
Yeah, so we recommends to approve.
That's all I had. If there's some other minor stuff, I'll shoot you an email or something.
Yep, we like cats and dogs. Anybody else? It can't be that good. Come on. All right. No. No, was it like, this is the best thing I've ever written? No, I didn't get that one. All right, if, we got a couple more days, so if there's other stuff, Tracy, please.
I just was also gonna, the email I sent was generally saying, bravo, that I thought it really struck a good tone between, yes, this is a big ask, all the things that are being put before you, townsfolk, but these are the, between, suggesting that we are really, A, lucky to live here, and B, that we have such a relatively low tax rate. But yes, these are a tough ask, but these are things that are being thought about. I thought it was a really good balance between being conservative and realistic. My only criticism would be that there could be more Neil Young songs woven.
Okay, well, I was trying to leaven the Donald Rumsfeld from last year by adding Neil Young this year. So. All right, well, if there's other stuff, thank you, Tracy. If there's other stuff that comes up or any, thoughts or observations, we've got a couple more days. I think I'm walking a little bit of a tightrope with Shauna, but we're getting closer. So anything further comes up, we'll talk about it one last time, probably at our meeting Thursday, and we'll be done and dusted. All right, anything further?
Time Thursday?
1:30? Alex and you probably need to do a little agenda tweaking, but we don't need to do that now.
Well, one has already been done.
Yeah, good, you put the vote in? Thank you. I thought I saw your fingers fly to the keyboard. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Norma?
Yeah, aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Tommy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Tracy?
Aye.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for the input.
Hey, I just sent that to you again.